Get started. We're already 8 minutes behind. So, my name is Ryan Darst. I'm part of the U.S. Solutions Center. I'm manager of the Americas for our solution architects in the U.S. I do a lot of talks with customers on automation just about every day. Everyone's trying to do something different. So, in this hopefully 25, 30 minutes, I'm going to go through a couple demos and a couple examples of things we can do. We'll talk about the R80 APIs. We'll talk about the identity API, other automation options that we may have, the thread API, and some stuff that's coming up that's going to be new. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a deployment for a AWS deployment or a full deployment. It's everything from an autoscale deployment of checkpoint gateways, web servers, load balancers, VPCs, just about everything that you may want to do in a web environment. I'm going to do this all with Ansible, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to deploy some CloudGuard instances. So I'm going to jump over to the demo first. It takes about 10 minutes for the deployment to occur. So I want to make sure we have that all going. And just to show, I only have a management server here. And if I look at my security policies, I only have 2 policies here. When we're done, we'll have another policy. We'll have 3 gateways and a new policy for everything that's here. So again, I'm going to use Ansible to deploy this complete environment. I'll go ahead and select that and let that go. If everything works right, in about 10 minutes, I'll have a complete web environment with, like I said, perimeter gateways. We'll have, of course, picked the wrong one. It's what you get for doing live demos. I have to do the deployment instead of delete. All right, let's do the deployment. That'll probably work better. Oh, the screen keep black. Do I need to change resolution? Okay. All right, so now it's creating all of my components in AWS. It's creating the gateways and everything else. I'll go back to the presentation. Again, it takes about 10 minutes for that full thing, full deployment to occur. All right. So let's talk about the R80 APIs. There's multiple ways we can do things. What we see a lot of people doing things with like change request automations, being able to take CSV files of hosts of different things, being able to import them into the R80 manager. We have a customer that was doing all their change requests via CLI, because that's what their vendor used before. And we help them change their change request process to actually spit out management CLI requests. So they could do the same thing they were doing before, but do it with the management CLI commands with R80 and be able to make those changes that way. Also, self-service portals. Where I came from, we probably had, seemed like more printers than people. I worked at a hospital, and they had printers for everything. And we were constantly having to go in and change different components on, add a printer, delete a printer, move it, change, whatever we had to do on it. And if I had something with R80 now, I could actually create a very simple self-service portal to where the help desk or the NOC could go in and actually manipulate those things. So I would never have to give them access to the GUI. They could just go in and update an object or update something in a web page, and it would automatically be provisioned. Rule-based efficiency, being able to go in and use things like the vSec controller where we can tie specific IPs to a role. So we can pull tags in from AWS, Azure, vCenter, ACI, any of those things, be able to pull those in and actually use those within my rule base. So I don't have to go in and actually change anything. And again, going back to my old environments where I used to work, I could take my VMware guys, every time they deployed a new Windows instance in VMware, I had to go into my firewalls, add the thing to the Windows group, and do all the things I typically would have to do and have to go through the change control. If I was using something like the vSet controller, I could literally just say, if this thing's tagged as a Windows host in VMware, it would get those Windows rules. It would be able to get the domain controller and all the things that Windows servers need to have access to. So it makes things easier. We don't care what automation tool you use. You can use Python, PHP, Perl, Java, don't care, Ansible, Terraform, any of those things to do that, to add objects or change things in R80. So how do we actually use the API? We actually have 4 methods. I'm going to have 3 on the screen here. The first one's web services. So we can use anything that makes a web service call to hit the API from the management server. We can use the management CLI. This one's very common for people that are really comfortable doing bash scripts and being able to do simple things. The management CLI comes on your Gaia devices automatically. You can also, management CLI comes with every install of Smart Dashboard on Windows. So if you like doing PowerShell stuff, guess what? You can use your management CLI on your Windows host to do all this stuff and use PowerShell to do everything that PowerShell does if you'd like to do that. We also have the Smart Console command line. So if you're in your GUI or in the dashboard, you can launch this and actually change things in, from there as well. So you can use any of these to do that. One of the things I will say with the management CLI, we have the option you can do batch imports. So I can import CSV files of hosts or rules, services, whatever you may want to add there. We can do that with the management CLI and being able to do that. So what tools, the tools that we use or the tools that I use to help demonstrate what Checkpoint can do with APIs and automation, the primary one is Postman. So Postman's it's a free tool. Go out and download it. It's a great utility to be able to, now I'm going to show a couple demos of using Postman. But we provide a collection of all of our calls. So the web API call that we have, I think there's 352 different calls that are in there today that you can use to do anything with the API. We also have collections for our Identity Awareness API, our Threat API, and the soon-to-becoming Gaia API to where we can push things down via a RESTful API down to our gateways directly, so you won't have to go into Clish and WebUI to do those things. If you want to see that, I have a demo in the next room, the technology room. I can show you that. I have a demo of that over there. Ansible. Ansible is what I'm using to deploy this AWS environment right now. I have that running over also in the tech room, just doing some stuff with ESX. So the thing I really like with Ansible is I can use other providers or other partners we have that we interface with, whether it be AWS, Azure, there's Google Cloud, and then I can use those same pieces in my playbooks to be able to reference that to Checkpoint. So I can leverage all these things in one simple playbook to build a deployment or manipulate a rule base or do things of that nature. And again, using any type of scripting language you want, because the RESTful API, we don't care. You just have to hit it with whatever your favorite scripting language is. I always like PHP. I can never understand Perl for whatever reason. So that's the route I went. I'm using Python now, and of course, anytime you want to use Bash, you can use curl to do a lot of these things too. So when we use the R80 API, those of you that are using R80, this should be fairly similar. If you haven't used R80, one of the things that's very important is we have this concept of sessions. So when you log in, even in the R80 dashboard, you get a session when you log in. So in this particular case, I'm logging in. I'm going to send an action to the API. In this case, I'm doing an add host. I'm going to do a publish because no one else is going to see my change until I actually publish that in my session. I can do an install policy. I don't have to. And then I'm going to do a log out. One of the big things with sessions, this enables us to be able to do admin concurrency. So that allows everyone has their own session. Everyone can do their own thing. And think about, our topic here is APIs and automation. We don't want the API process to be stopped because because somebody's doing something in the GUI. We want the thing to just do what it's supposed to do. So the sessions concept is very important. When we talk about all of these, obviously log in, nothing's going to work unless you get a session, unless you log in, right? We can do whatever actions we have. But login or logout is probably as important as the first one. And the reason I say that is I went to a customer site, had just upgraded to R80 about 3 weeks prior. I was there to talk about automation, and they literally said, yeah, everything worked fine. We wrote our first script, and what that was install policy. So their script went in and did a login. It did the install policy, and then it quit. Because they installed policy, they didn't see any need to do anything else, so they never logged out. So the first thing they said was, yeah, we wrote this script. It worked great for about 2 weeks, then all of a sudden it quit. We have no idea why. It just stopped. Have no idea. But we created a new API user, and all of a sudden it's working again. But it doesn't work with the old user, so I kind of knew what it was. There's a limit to 100 sessions per user on the API. So if you're doing things in the API, make sure you log out because those sessions stay around, and once you hit 100, you'll get an error message that you can't log in because you can't. So make sure if you're doing any of these things, make sure you do a log out. So let's do a live demo. I'm going to show Postman. We'll create a host, and we'll run a couple commands there. I'm already creating the Rulebase with Ansible. I'll show you that, and then we'll do a search for the Rulebase match because that's one of the things that's pretty common to see. All right, so let's go over to our system. All right, we already got a gateway here. That's good. All right. So if we look at Postman, is this a resolution thing that I need to change? Touchy, okay. So the first thing I need to do, right, if we follow the flow, the first thing I have to do is I have to log in, right, to the R80 API. So I'm going to do a login. And what I should get back, I got a 200 message, and I have this session ID that's here. That session ID identifies me for 10 minutes to the API server. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send over an add host. So I'm going to send Ryan host 360, color blue, because that's my favorite color, and then an IP address. I'm going to send that over. Now, once I send that, I should get a 200 message, which means the API server accepted it. If I go over to R80, if I look for these new hosts, it's not there yet. I didn't finish the process. I have to publish. So once I publish that change, once the screen comes back, we'll see the host is there. There we go. You see the host is now there. You can also see the automation's going in. It's creating all these gateways and pushing policies and stuff, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. Again, if I want to delete that object, I can go in and do a delete. If I look at R80 now, I'll have that it's locked, and it's locked by my API process, and then I'm going to do a publish, and then that host will disappear. It'll be gone. Very simple example. And again, in Postman, I have a collection. This one has 352 calls. You can pick any of these. One of the other ones I want to show while we're in here, this one's in the miscellaneous section. There's a lot of good calls in the API down at the very bottom that no one looks at. And this one in particular, I've used to solve all kinds of weird different problems or actually do things that you wouldn't think you could do. This particular example, I'm running a script against my management server, and it's fwsam-all. So I'm actually running a SAM command on my management server that blocks that IP across all my gateways that are attached to that management. And I can use this from the API by simply running this run script call. Very simple to do. If I go in, I look at the show access Rulebase. So this gives me the ability, I can do a filter on the Rulebase. So for those of you that have used R80, hopefully everyone knows that this exists. If I look at my policy, up here at the top there's a search for IP. Let me move this out of the way. There's this mode called packet mode. So what this does is it does a search on the rule base based on the IPs that are how the firewall would see it. So it does it exactly like the firewall sees it. So it's not just going to search that object exists. It's going to see if it actually would match. So again, I'm going to use Postman. In this particular case, I'm going to look for 10.20.00/24, and I'll send that over. And I should get a response here at the bottom that it matches rule number 4. And if I look at rule number 4, and let me see if it gives me a total, it should give me a total at the bottom. Matched one rule. So if I look at rule 4, this is that 10.20.00/24. So that's the rule it should hit. Now, the reason I want to show this is this gives us the capability of the API. I can actually start doing, I can actually do some intelligent searches. I can say, source destination port, does this match anywhere in my rule base? It gives me that capability. If something already exists there, then I know that it's there, or I can go do something else with it. In R80.20, we're going to have what Dorit talked about, is have that rule assistant feature where we'll be able to use the API to actually do a suggestion on where to place a rule as well. So again, let me go back to what I started with. So we started with this deployment in Ansible, and I'll show you the, should have some yellow and blue lines if everything worked like it's supposed to. So that means it registered everything in DNS for me. I will see that we have 3 different gateways. They should hopefully all be green. You can see that 2 of them just have IPS and firewall and identity awareness. The other one has URL filtering and some other things attached to it. That's my perimeter gateway that I deployed. All of these have policies assigned to them or pushed to them. I've got 5 web servers that are installed. And if I look at the actual rule base, we'll see this rule number 3 is a data center object. And if I can get this to go down a little bit. So this data center object is using the vSec controller and pulling in all of the different IPs from AWS. So my web servers that I deployed, I have 5 of them, and I have 5 IPs here. Those IPs were all given randomly to the AWS devices when they were launched. So the vSec controller is pulling those in based on the tag. So application equals vSec demo. So all the IPs from any web server, anything that gets assigned, is going to get that IP and get tied to that. So this particular rule, the reason I have it in there is this is on my perimeter gateway, and you can see it's those sources to anything. The reason I put that in there is when I'm launching these web servers, I'm having it go down and install Apache, having it do a very simple HTML file so I can see the actual device or see the web server. And I'll show you, it's really stupid simple what it does. Basically just pulls the IP address of the host and puts it in the HTML file. So this way I can see, all these different IPs, 136, 13, and 142. If I look at R80, if I go back to that, we should see some of those IPs here. So 13, 136, 49, 142, 166, all those exist there. Now, one of the other things I wanted to just highlight here, Rule 1 and 2, I did not put there. Those were automatically driven by the auto-provisioning components. And I don't think I'm logged into AWS or I would do it. But if I went in and actually just changed the listener on that load balancer, these rules would automatically change. So if I added another listener to that load balancer to 8091, we would get 2 new rules that automatically get deployed and pushed out to those gateways in support of that. In addition, if I go in and this, the application vSec demo, or in my gateways, if I scaled that up with auto scaling, it's going to automatically add those gateways to the scale group, push policies to them, just like these 2 did. My web servers, if I deleted some, that list would go down to, let's say, 3 or 2. Or if I scaled up, it'd go up to 7, 10, whatever number it may be. So it's all dynamic. It's all being driven by the automation, the auto-provisioning components. So let's talk about some of the other things we can do. We covered these. So what else do we have available? We have Identity API. So we can actually go in and use the Identity API to subscribe IP addresses to roles. So this is something that runs on the gateway, or Identity Awareness Gateway. You basically create a secret, and you can use just a regular RESTful API. You can see this is Postman here again. We're just sending down a JSON file with some IPs and the role we want to attach them to, so that you can very easily go in and do enforcement based on IPs or based on a role based on this. So things I could see this being used for is maybe a guest access system where you're having somebody sign in, they could grab the IP, you could authorize it to do what it needs to do in there. So this has been around, I think, since 7730. It's all GA and 8010. It's all available and documented there. It's very cool, very easy to use. This is the vSec controller. Again, if I have one device, I have one IP in my Rulebase. If I scale up and I had 4, I would have 4 IPs that are in that list. Exactly the same thing I just showed in the live demo. Some other things we can do, dynamic block lists. There's an SK for this if you want to do some Tor node blocking. There's some other scripts as well that are available. But again, this is a very simple thing that if you want to block those types of things, you can do that on the gateway itself to bring those in. Something else you could do as well is use CP-RID. So this has been around forever. This allows you to transfer files, execute commands on the gateways, and it all does this through SICK. So I think TAC's been using this for years to actually reset users' passwords on their gateways if they forgot it, because you can actually get in there and do that, and here's some examples there. They're also in that SK as well. So what about threat prevention? There is a Sandblast API, and we can do some really cool stuff with this as well. So if I have some type of custom application, file server, some type of system that's pulling in files, I can actually send them over to the API. Now this could be Sandblast service in the cloud. We don't even need any checkpoint infrastructure to do this. You just need a license key to send stuff into the cloud, and we'll do the scrubbing there. You can also have a Sandblast appliance locally and send it to that device if you wanted as well to do that. But what we can do there is we could, let's say if you had like an HR system that's pulling in CVs, maybe you want to just flatten all of them to be PDFs and not be anything else. You could very easily go in and do that. You could have it set so that those files coming in get automatically changed to whatever format you may want them to be. The SK for that, for the Sandblast API is there. You can also do queries. You can do queries against AV, against threat emulation to be able to do things. You can upload, download reports. It's pretty simple to do. So let's talk just for a minute on some of the new things that are coming that we're talking about. One of the ones I really like is this thing called hooks. So with the API, it's been requested to have functionality where think of every time I do a publish to the database, I want to do a verification. So every time I do a publish, I want to verify the policy as soon as that publish happens. So that way, if there's an issue, somebody can get an alert, let's say via email or some other method, that there's a problem with that, whatever they just put in. Instead of waiting for the policy install to happen, they could actually do the verify there. So that's one of the key things that they're going to do. They're also going to build in some additional granularity into API functionality on what users can actually run, a little more than we have today. One that a lot of customers have asked for is the ability to, if I have something I've done in the GUI, to be able to spit out the management CLI commands for that. So that way, if I do something in the GUI, I know exactly what I can do with the GUI or the CLI or the RESTful API to be able to fix that. Dorit talked this morning about the log export API that's there. The Gaia RESTful API, this one I'm really I really like this one. This is one I have running over in the tech room next door. And it provides the ability, I can do a ton of things there with doing everything I would do in Clish or in the web UI to be able to configure my machine from a RESTful API. In my example I have over there, It takes 2 minutes and 20 seconds to do a full deployment, including first-time wizard reboot. Some of you guys have seen it. But being able to use that RESTful API, I never even have to log into Clish as long as I have an IP address and username and password on the box. So to me, this is one of the key things that we have going. Over there in the tech room, we have the ServiceNow integration with the APIs. And then our 80/20, we're also going to be adding the IOCs, so we'll be able to bring in indicators of compromise as well. And that's new. A lot of the scripts are available on Checkmates. If you're not on Checkmates, please join that. Everything that I just showed here was in this demo that we did on August 15th. All the scripts, documentation, video, everything that we have there is available. So if you want to see any of the Ansible scripts or anything that we did or any of the stuff I'm running in the tech room, it's all available here up on Checkmates. Again, it was the August 15th automation thing we did. And if you want a link to that, that's the link, short link to that particular thing. But again, it's easy to get started, easy to automate, easy to do a lot of things with the APIs. And I like doing things with the API more than the GUI, so it's for me this is a good thing. So I'll take any questions over in the tech room at the table and toward the back of the right if you have any questions. And thank you.